We're ready to get started in the continuing educational series of Work Smarter, Not Harder. This is Phil Saltzman with Myco Pool Covers, introducing Jim Dorsey, National Sales Director and Technical Specialist for Kayden Manufacturing, with over 2 decades of experience measuring and installing liners. We're going to hand it to you, Jim. I know you have a lot of material to cover this evening.
That I do. That I do. All right, guys. Well, there I am. Sorry about that. We only have an hour here, so let me get into this as quickly as I can. All right, we're going to crystal clear audio. Are we sharing? We are sharing. All right, can everybody see me up there? Is my screen shared with you guys?
Yep. Yeah, you got two screens up.
Okay, cool. All right, so obviously, as Phil said, I'm the Director of Sales and Technical Specialist here at Kayden Manufacturing. I've been doing this for a little while now. I'm going to try and cover everything from quick quoting to get you in and out, get the job sold quickly without wasting time, to measuring the liner, measuring the pool properly to get that liner installed. And then, of course, we're going to cover actually getting that liner in. So we'll anything that you see here in my slideshow, if you need a copy of it, because there are going to be some stuff that's going to come in really helpful out in the field as we go along here, you've got all my contact information there. I can make this stuff readily available for you. Whether you buy liners from us or not, it doesn't matter. We're all in this together, so I'm here to help. So without further ado, let's get into it. Measuring for a quote, first of all, since we're talking about doing shaving time and making more money, when it comes to quoting, please don't go out and measure a pool just to quote it. You don't even need to go to the pool, and I'll get into that in a second. But as far as I don't care what the shape or the size of the pool is, there's really only a couple measurements that any liner manufacturer is going to need to make that to get you that quote. It's mostly going to be the length and the width, as you see here by the red lines on most of these shapes. When we even free forms, what's the longest length and what's the widest width? That's the basic information we know to get the square footage to get you the quote for what you need. Does it have steps? Okay, great. Give me the width on the steps, give me the width on the bench, whatever the case might be. If you've got something where it's like a T or an L, then we're going to need a couple lengths and widths for the quote. Again, we're just trying to find out the square footage. It gets more complicated with lazy L's, where you can see the red around the pool. We need to measure the perimeter walls to find out the square footage on that. Grecian L's get a little bit more. Anywhere that you see a red line is a length or a width dimension that any company is going to need to quote this for you. Now, the thing that's really going to save you a lot of time, and we've all done this, yeah, it's great to get FaceTime in with the customer, shake hands, whatever you can do. But in this day and age, when the phone is ringing nonstop because everybody's doing their staycation, Google Earth Pro is your friend. Simply googleearth.com, I guess is what it is. But there is an app called Google Earth Pro, which I highly recommend over it. It's free. The reason I recommend it more so is it has a history. This track here across the top, 1985 to 2020, if the current photo comes up and it's blurry or it's got a cover on it, Phil was out there putting the cover on for these people and you can't see the pool, you can go back through history until you find the best possible picture that you can. Once you pull up the one that you can see clearly, you can pull up the ruler measurement. I've got a length here on this particular pool of 38 feet. I can go and I can do the width here at a couple of points and see what the widest width is. Then I can call my liner manufacturer, email them, whatever, say, hey, I've got an 18 by 38 free form, no steps. What's it going to cost me? Now you can do this right in your office. You can do this right over the phone. There's no need to drive to the home anymore. Once you're starting to feel this out though, and the customer's sounding like they're going to get on board, obviously you need to get out to the pool to see it for yourself as far as the installation quote is going to be concerned. But this is how we do it here. I quote liners all over the country and up into Canada via Google Earth. Now, when you've sold the job and you're actually going to get into measuring the liner, there's a certain list, a cheat sheet, if you will, of all the things that you want handy when you show up. Everything up here at the top can all fit into an easy backpack or a bag or something. Your clipboard, obviously filled with all your measure forms, which we're going to go into different measure forms. Mechanical pencil. I highly recommend using a pencil as opposed to a pen because it's going to get messy otherwise. Sidewalk chalk, which we'll discuss why we need that. Electrical tape, a cutting tool, which I'll show you a picture of here in a minute. Digital recorder. This is going to, again, be how we're going to be doing this stuff quicker and more efficiently and saving you money by doing this stuff by yourself, not paying to have a helper with you. Your tape measures, both your 200-foot tape measures and 25-foot steel tape measure. Beyond that, you're going to need your usual pool pole, an out and down, which I'll describe what that is, sometimes known as a down and out, but that depends on the day. A couple of helpers, quote unquote helpers, which again, this is all stuff I'm going to explain. And one of Phil's cover removal tools, because sometimes that cover's still on and you got to get into that pool. So this is the cutting tool that I'm talking about. Ideally, when you're going to measure a pool for a liner, you either want it completely full and the water clear enough that you can see the floor in the deep end clearly, or you want it completely empty with the liner out. In a perfect world, hey, that sounds great. Let's go measure some pools. That's not how it happens. This particular tool is actually an attachment for an extending pole, and this is a blade for cutting tile. This is a great way if you've got a hopper that the liner has stretched and you can't get to the corners to get those measurements that you need. Attach this on your pole, go in there and start cutting that liner and get to those corners. If you can't get to those corners, you cannot get an accurate measurement. Now, this does raise a little bit of a red flag, because if you don't have a commitment, a signed contract, a down payment, a something on that job, and you go cutting this homeowner's liner, that could potentially be something stupid that they could complain about. So make sure you're covered before you go cutting anything. It's never been an issue, but that doesn't mean it can't be. At least it hasn't been for me. Something to think about. But this is a very valuable tool when you come into those old, and the old liners, once you start cutting them, they pretty much just shatter apart anyway. This is my digital headset. I use this because I only measure pools by myself. I do not have a helper that comes with me. And I measure all kinds of crazy free forms, ABs, liner over step, benches, stools, whatever you got, I'll measure it. Don't need anybody with me. But if I'm ABing, I can't write down all those measurements as I go. So I put my, throw this in my pocket. I press record, put it on hold so I can't accidentally turn it off while I'm working. I'll put my headset on and I'll record. I'll just talk to myself. A, 28 feet, 9 inches. A, 28 feet, 9 inches. B, 12 feet, 6 inches. B, 12 feet, 6 inches. Next point. Then when I get back to the office and I do this, I will sit down and I'll actually fill out my measurement form while listening back to this. You can set it to where it only activates on voice activation, so you're not looking at dead air. You can speed it up, you can slow it down. This thing's invaluable. It's just a couple bucks at Staples and you're good to go. 2 different tape measures, and I distinctly like to mention different tape measures, and we'll get into why, because when you're A-Bing, the way I do it is I measure A and B at the same time, so I don't have to go around the pool 3 times. I can just go around once. With identical tape measures, they can get confusing. So these are not only different looking, the widths of the tape measure, one's thicker, one's wider. Always, always, always make sure, and they do this to us, so we got to watch out. One side of the tape measure is going to be feet and inches. The other side of the tape measure is going to be feet and decimal points. Make sure you're on the feet and inches, because that's how we talk here about liners. So they're usually different colors. Like the yellow side will be inches, the white side will be decimal. Just keep an eye out for that, and we'll talk about those sort of things more as we get into specific A/B measuring. So this is the quote unquote helper, or at least one of my 2 helpers. This is essentially a block of cement that was poured into a cheap plastic bucket. It has a threaded rod here in the middle, so I can put my AB, my 100-foot tape measure on there for AB, my stake. I've got a loop in here just so it makes it easier to carry. My other helper actually has an extra feature on it. It has a handle and the spike in the middle. This is very easy to make, by the way. There is a metal loop here on the side that I've attached one of my 100-foot tape measures to. This is how I can measure the length and the width and the diagonals of a pool by myself. I don't have to hook this end of the tape measure to anything. It's hooked to this 10-pound block of cement. I can pull it any which way I want. It's not going to move. This is how I'm doing all these measures. I could spend a whole day out by myself, measure 12 pools, and I'm not paying anybody else to do it, because that's all money that we're not making yet. This is my down and out. Sorry, out and down. On a bad day, it's a down and out. This is a custom tool, and I'll get into how you can make one of these. This is a godsend. This will save you so much time and make your measures so much more accurate. This is a vintage extendable transit pole for surveyors. It extends from, what is this, 5.5 feet to 11 feet, I guess, when it's all said and done, 10, 11 feet, something like that. What we've done is we've attached up here a plumb line with a bob on the end of it. So this gets extended as far out as I need it to. I can lock it in place with this wheel here. I can open this up and let the plumb bob go down. When I need to get a depth, I can get it with this. I can drop this bob to the one of the corners of the hopper pad. I can, as long as the line is taut, I can lift this up, this whole pole up, let this line swing back, and where the tip of that intersects with here is going to tell me what the depth was. I just need to deduct the thickness of this and the thickness of the deck, which might be, let's say 4 inches. So, if it comes in 8'4", then I deduct the 4 inches. I know that's an 8-foot hopper pad. Pretty standard, really. But this will also give me my transitions going into the hopper. So the back wall, the side walls, 3.5 feet, 4 feet, whatever they are, this will give me, when I've got my plumb bob down on the corner of the hopper pad where the transitions meet, however far out the bead receiver is lining up with this, let's say it's 3'6", it shows me right there. That's my distance out. So I've got all my transition measurements. We're going to go into in just a second here. Here's one I just found on eBay. Same thing, a vintage transit pole, extendable transit pole for surveying. Might have been like $50. Well worth its weight in gold. There are some modern versions as well. Just make sure you get one. This is an aluminum version. Just make sure that you get one that's going to be long enough to do something. Most transitions are going to be about 4 feet. Your depths are going to be 8 feet, so you got to be able to swing that plumb bob back and get that depth measurement. Here, by way, for instance, is another vintage plumb bob. These are easily readily sold in hardware stores, though. So yeah, look online, look on eBay, get yourself one of these guys. It's going to save you so much headache, so much hassle. If the water's not clear, though, you can't see where that plumb bob is hitting, where the floor of the hopper and the transition is meeting, then we got to do it the old-fashioned way with the extendable pole. We got to poke around the floor, feel where the transition ends and the flat floor starts, and try to find that corner, and then lean that pole back, drop a chalk line there. Then we can start measuring, bird's eye view measurements on these things. So it's a little bit more work. The discrepancy that we're going to have with that pole is when you're doing it by yourself and you put that 8-foot pole, slide it down the transition, find the corner of the hopper pad, lean it back, it might look level to you. It might look straight up and down, and that's, great. And you hit that chalk line. But unless you have somebody standing on the other side of the pool from you, you can't know for sure if that's really straight up and down visually. You're going to need a level to really do that. Luckily, being realistic, when we're dealing with the hopper, if we're off an inch or two, nobody's going to know. That's where most of the shrink is going to happen when the engineer designs your liner. We're not talking about liner over step at this point where, we need to be within 1/8 of an inch. But this is why we like that clear water, or we like that liner out of the pool. We know we can't, if it's a sand bottom or something, we can't leave a liner out of a pool for too long. That's going to create potential problems. if we've got a long lead time or something. But this guy is a great way to go. If again, if you don't have this tool, or we can't, you can tell when the pointed tip here hits the floor. You'll feel that little tug on the string, so you can still get your depth measurements usually, even if the water's dirty. But if for some reason you're not able to do so, the trick to getting the depth measurement on a dirty pool or without the out and down is to lay your 8-foot pole across the and here I'll bring up a picture so we can talk about it. So we're here at the corner of the deep end. If you lay an 8-foot pole, a 45-degree angle across this corner, so the middle of the pole is out beyond where the hopper pad is, you can tape something heavy to the end of your you could tape something heavy right here. I usually use my Leatherman. I'll tape it on that, and then I'll throw that over the pole like I'm going fishing or something like that until that drops down and hits the floor. I pull that taut. So I've got my Leatherman sitting right about here on the floor. I've got my measure, my tape measure going up here, up over the pole and then across the back. I can see now what the water depth is. I can get a measurement on the water. From that point, I can take my regular steel tape measure and measure from the water's surface up to the bead receiver. That will tell me what the depth is here in the hopper pad. So there's different ways to get it, but there's certainly easier ways than others. And if you're doing it by yourself, there's there are some ways that you can only do it by yourself. So this is just getting into a generic measure form. Clearly, you can see what most manufacturers are going to be looking for. Any pool you do, no matter the shape, the size, this is going to be your most basic information right here. Obviously, we want to write neatly. Fractions are usually preferred over decimals. We're going to go into more details as far as I'm going to show you one of these forms actually filled out here momentarily. When you get into more complicated shapes, you're going to have your measurement forms for Grecians, for Roman ends, for lazy L's, true L's. The diagonals are of vital importance. Even here on, I'm going to show you in a minute how important the diagonals are, even on a rectangular pool. If any pool is more than 3 inches out of true, meaning the diagonals are more than 3 inches off, the manufacturer of the liner will need to alter the shape of the pool slightly to shape of the liner slightly to match the pool. That's why these diagonals are so important. Is this a true 90-degree angle? Was it built properly? We don't know. Now, if it's not, when we get, right here, it doesn't really matter. But when we get over here, back there, now we're talking several inches off, and the liner could have an issue with fitting right.
Jim, real quick, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt. There's just some questions. Do we want to wait and handle this at the end? I just see some hands up. I just, I don't want people to think they're ignored, or I don't know the best way you want to deal with that.
I was originally thinking guys could take notes, but I see that we have people driving. I see we have people actually in the field, so taking notes might be a little tricky. So maybe we should address them as they come. It looks like Ray's actually got a pole in the pool right now.
All right, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to
all good.
Have a protocol. Thanks.
Yeah. Hang on. Let me I don't have everybody up here. Let me get everybody on my screen. Here we go. Ray, you've got a pole in the pool. I see you're muted right now. Did you have a question? We can't hear you, Ray. Looks like your microphone is off.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, buddy.
Okay. I'm at my favorite pool. I'm at my house.
Okay.
So this is when you start talking about depth. This is my best trick for measuring depth by myself.
Yep.
It's just a grade rod and a clamp. I'll pull it out so you guys can see it. Once I get the water line, instead of plumb bobbing, I just take it to my bead receiver.
Right.
And what I did is to hit my pads on the clamp, I have a clear demarcation. So I'm actually hitting 2 measurements at once by myself. I just wanted to share that because it's been a home run.
That's great. Yeah, anything that's helping you, by all means, you can help the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
Much appreciated. Anybody else got any tips? I'm trying to unmute people here so we can. Yeah, if you have a question, By all means, jump in. I'll try and pull you in, get you sorted, and then we'll get back to business here.
Okay, you can mute me now, Jim.
Okay, there you go. All right. So yeah, Ray, thank you for that. Again, I attend even at my old age seminars as much as I can, because there's always going to be one thing I'll walk out of there going, that's something I never thought of. I'm going to give that a try. So you know, hopefully, if we got any more information like that, by all means, let's jump on it. So yeah, we're looking at Grecians. We're looking at here's your basic liner over step, and again, it's going to look different from manufacturer to manufacturer, but the information is always going to be the same. You'll notice when you're measuring liner over step, it's actually more accurate if we get the tread to bead receiver on each step and not the actual riser height on each one. So that's when you see that this is how we're measuring that. There's options now for step rods or bead. I don't know if how many of you have installed liner over step with the bead and the bead receiver. I actually personally, Ray, you waving me down here? Hang on, let me bring you in. Why can't I unmute you, Ray? What's going on? I don't think my computer likes you.
Jim, only the admins can do the unmuting, so I'll get to it. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here too. I'm just trying to find him.
He's Ray, you're on. What you got, buddy?
I was probably just nodding my head about vinyl over stairs and the bead receiver. I mean,
Yeah.
I've
All right,
used
well,
it.
Everybody, I'd like you to know that Ray was agreeing with me, and for that, I appreciate that, Ray. Yes. No, Ray, have you installed liner over step with bead receiver?
I have. I really only for a retrofit vinyl over stair treatment.
Yeah.
But
How did you feel about it? Do you like it more than the step rods?
see, that's the thing. I think it's a better system, but I'm so into rods and pockets. I'm brainwashed.
No, exactly. Us old guys, we've been doing rod and pocket for so long that we're like, bead what? I've had dealers go both ways on that. The bead, and for those who aren't familiar, there's an option now with steel steps where the vinyl goes over the steps, that in the back corner here where the tread and the riser meet on each step, they can install a recessed bead receiver. So now the manufacturer can just weld your standard bead right on the back side of the liner right there, and it just clips right in. That sounds pretty cool. I've had dealers say they love it. I've had dealers say they don't. I really can't say one way or the other what's going to be your better option. As long as those steps are measured correctly and it's centered on install, you should be good to go one way or the other. But you do need to let your manufacturer know, are you in need of bead or are you in need of rod pockets? Because we can't do both. Once you've got one, you're pretty much committed at that point. And save for gluing rod pockets onto the back of the steps in the field, that's really not the best option. Lastly, or almost lastly, as far as standard measure forms go, you've obviously got your AB page. This can look a bit daunting, but we're going to break this down. This does not have to be the nightmare or the run for the hills scenario that a lot of guys feel like it is. Yes, it's a lot of math, but you don't have to do the math. It's just the measuring. Speaking of measuring, here we go again. This is the kind of stuff that you guys might want copies of to throw in your van, throw in your clipboard. So anything that you want a copy of from this seminar, be sure and reach out to me, email me, text me, call me, whatever. I'll get you set up with whatever you need. Basically, what we're looking at here is majority of the shapes of pools that we see. And as I mentioned again, anything that's out of 3 inches out of true needs to be specially designed. So when we're looking at measuring here, these dotted lines on every pool, these are the diagonals that we are looking for. Is this pool square or is it not? When it comes to accurate measuring, now we're getting into, you'll see there's a lot more lines on this page as there was on the first page when it was just one length, one width. What's the quote? What's it going to cost? Here we've got 2 lengths, 2 widths, and you see that they're at near the sides of the pool where the wall is going to be more true. In the corners, the wall is supported by its own corner. Here in the middle, we might see the wall bowing in, we might see the wall bowing out. And if you measure there, you're going to get what the top of the wall is doing and not what the bottom of the wall is doing. When we're making a liner, we are concerned about what the pool is doing where the wall and the floor come together. That applies to the length and the width. That also applies to the corners. If you're looking at a pool and it's got a 45-degree corner on the bead receiver, that might be hunky-dory, but if it's not doing the same thing at the floor, we need to know what's happening at the floor. A lot of times we'll see a 6-inch radius on the wall, but a 45 on the bead receiver. If we make that liner with a 45 at the floor to match the bead receiver, we're now going to end up with wrinkles in that pool. So when you're measuring, think about the floor of the pool more so than the top of the wall, the bead receiver of the pool. What's happening at the floor? That's what our measurements are looking to recreate, which is why we're measuring in these corners or near the corners to get a more accurate, a more true measurement. When it comes to measuring, again, the diagonals, basically what we're doing is we're making triangles. By cutting the pool into triangles, we can see what the angles are of these corners. It'll recreate that for us when we put it into the CAD system. The more complicated the shape, the more diagonals we need to do. When we get into T's and we get into octagons, we've got multiple lengths and widths and multiple diagonals. It starts getting a little crazy, but with the helper, the cement block, and 100-foot tape, this will take you all of 5 minutes to get these. With ovals, sometimes you'll see a red line here on the perimeter wall. Same thing with the Grecian. We see 3 red lines here. That means we want that panel length, and the straight wall length. Again, here on the oval, a straight wall length. Anytime we get into something that's a non-quote-unquote basic geometric shape, I've denoted where we got to jump over to AB points. Anything that's like obviously free form. But anything with straight lines that we can work with, it might take more measurements, but you can do this probably quicker than you could AB something like this. If it's really seems like the hassle, you got 4-foot radius corners, you're having a hard time finding those diagonals that we need to get. ABing is always a possibility. The important thing is what are you going to feel comfortable with? What do you think is going to represent this pool in numbers to us most accurately? If you're ever unsure of something, obviously take pictures. Include pictures and drawings with your measurement submission so that the engineer who's designing your liner can be on the same page as you. What do we have next here? This is a normal but kind of unusual one. Something we came up with here. It's just a standard oval, but things have to change when you've got a straight fiberglass step that's not centered on the shallow end. It's off to one side. That liner has to be made with a straight section right there to go with that fiberglass step. If this is rounded, it's a different story, but once it's straight, we've got to locate that. Unless you want to AB this, which you probably don't, this type of measure form will get us the information, or your liner manufacturer the information they need to make that liner.
Letter that I say that says your time is bridged back to your
Question.
original hire date.
Is that mostly for the ground measurement and not the wall measurement?
Which one? The one we're looking at right now?
Yeah, with the flat spot, that would be the ground measurement. You would need a bottom measurement more important than a top measurement.
If you can get a ground measurement, that's going to be great. But what we're lining up here is the wall, the end of the straight wall going to the corners of the steps. We can't always get it on the ground, so we've got to work with the bead receiver. If we're dealing with a wall that's out of true, then we'll go back to that out and down with the plumb bob and see how many inches that wall is out of true to add to or subtract from the measurements that we're getting here. But basically, we're just trying to locate. Obviously we can get the width easily, but at what point are those steps built into that wall for that straight?
Gotcha. Fantastic. Thanks.
Yeah, ground. If you can get to an empty pool and you can get measurements on the ground, wow, you can't get any more accurate than that. We're trying to recreate what the ground is actually doing by working up here as accurately as possible. And one of the cool tricks when it comes to nope, go back. I will place my helper here at the corner of the shallow end. I'll run my 100-foot line, but I'm only going to go maybe 40 feet out this way and then wrap it up so it's a nice taut line right along here. So I've got my total length. I can see it's, 30, 32, let's say. Now when I stand right here at the shallow break and I look straight down, I can see where that line is intersecting with my tape measure. And I can write that down on my clipboard, on my measure form. I can walk down here. I can stand right here. I can see where that break is lining up with my tape measure. I can write that down. I can do it down here as well. I don't need to get that hyper accurate with something that's 8 feet deep, 16 feet wide, let's say. Excuse me. I can visualize that. Another way of saving time. You by yourself should be able to measure this in 10 minutes and be out of the backyard. All right. We've covered that. When you get, the more angles the pool has, the more things we need to double check as far as diagonals are concerned. This is, what do they call this? A diamond or something, hexagon, whatever they call this. But obviously this is just a good example of, you walk into a backyard and you see something like this. Okay, what do I need to measure? Well, anytime we have a flat surface, we need to know what it's doing. We need to know from point to point, side to side, diagonal to diagonal. What does the engineer need to see? And if you're ever out in the field and you're stuck on something, you have my contact information. You can reach out to me. If I'm in the office, I'll try and walk you through whatever you're facing out there. When we're talking about measuring those diagonals, all diagonals are always taken from a hypothetical 90. If you've got a 6-inch radius, hey, that's easy to find. You can just kind of visualize where that hypothetical 90, which is this point right here, that's our hypothetical 90. If you've got a 2-foot radius or a 4-foot radius corner, this now gets harder to find, harder to visualize. So you might want to lay something down, a pool pole, another tape measure, something to get from where the corner arc ends and the straight wall begins. We need to extend these lines so they intersect. So now when we're pulling our diagonals this way, we're pulling from that point. If we measure from here, we're going to lose accuracy. Now you're just visualizing where the middle of that arc is. Even from a hypothetical point, an eyeballed point is going to end up being more accurate than measuring from the middle of this arc. And this is also the same diagram for how do you measure a corner radius. You're going to extend your straight walls out until they intersect, and the distance from 1 and 2 on each side, let's say that's 6 inches, let's say that's 2 feet, let's say that's 4 feet. Those are your most common radius corners. That's what we're looking at. Now, what we're actually measuring is not the deck. We're looking for the bead receiver, which is probably embedded under here a little bit, just behind that line, the bead receiver that's underneath. So when we're A-Bing, when we're visualizing stuff like this, make sure you're getting to that hypothetical bead receiver point and not so much the edge of the deck, and unless you're measuring for one of Phil's safety covers. All right. So that's hypothetical 90s and measuring for radius corners. As we get into actually filling out a measure form, obviously print clearly, please. Otherwise, we don't know what's going to happen. Be specific. Company name, job name, pattern if they've given it to you. Let the dealer know if there's an option for thickness on mill. Make sure that's put down there. As you can see here, these are all just basic measurements, but not everything is filled out. Okay, some dealers will allow this sort of thing to happen. Some will not. Some will spit this back to you and say, no, you haven't filled everything out. It's basic math, people. I'm standing at the edge of the pool. Like I said before, I look down at the shallow break. I can see on my tape measure, it's 8 feet. Great, no problem. I walk down here to the hopper break. I look down on my tape measure. I see him at 22 feet at this point. I can write 22 feet right there, and math will tell me what the difference between 22 minus 8 is going to be my transition. I can do the same thing as I walk down here to the back side of the hopper pad and write that 28 in there. Math is going to dictate what those are all going to be. Again, some dealers will say you need to fill this out. Others say you don't. But as far as you're concerned, when you're in the field and you're trying to be quick about it, this is all you need to do. These numbers right here, these two on the side, when you get back to the office, you have more time on your hands. Now you can punch these numbers in if you need to. If your dealer's going to say, hey, I need those. I need you to do that. Fine, no problem. I got all the information right here in my calculator. This is where I'm drawing my diagonals because, again, those are important. If these two numbers are more than 3 inches different, then the liner needs to be made accordingly, and we may actually want to A/B the pool to figure out just how off we are. Step, if you got fiberglass steps somewhere in the shallow end, let your dealer let your liner manufacturer know that, so they can put your step seam somewhere. If they don't have steps, another option is to put that step seam where a skimmer might be, if you want to measure that out. Otherwise, it's going to end up somewhere. There has to be a seam somewhere. Some homeowners don't want to see it. Others are a little bit more realistic. But if you can hide it somewhere, by all means, put it where the steps are. When you, again, getting into if you're not going to use a section of a measure form, it might be wise just to exit out so there's no confusion. We know that you're not missing information here. Again, with the Grecians putting in these measurements that we're showing here. This is a bit of overkill. This is just if the Grecian corners aren't true. Sometimes they aren't. But this just gives you an idea. I'm trying not to get too crazy here on this subject of filling out the forms. Again, as I said before, this particular pool, 45 degrees at the bead receiver on the back corner of the steps. But what was behind the liner was actually a 6-inch radius on the floor and in the corner. This liner needs to be made with a 6-inch radius. If we go to 45, we're going to have wrinkles here in the corner. This is where these 0.25, 0.75, 0.25s, fractions are actually preferred. I tend to throw decimals out there sometimes. This is where this is important. These measurements on these steps, the widths, the front corners, the recesses, the recess being from this point to this point, how many inches back. If this imaginary line is our shallow wall, how many inches back is this recess to the bottom riser? This is all stuff that needs to be accurate because we're only dealing with a few inches at this point. You know, here we've only got 10 3/4 of an inch of stretch. If this wasn't measured right, you're gonna have a hard time putting this liner in into this bead receiver. So accuracy is key. Don't shrink your measurements. I know you think some guys might think, well, I want the liner to fit nice and tight. If you want your liner to fit tight, tell your dealer, I need a tight fitting liner, but these are my measurements. Let the engineer who knows all the tricks of doing that sort of stuff, give him the exact measurements and let him make the call on where to shrink it, how much to shrink it, depending on the time of the year, the thickness of the vinyl, the shape of the pool. There's a lot of factors we're going to be looking at here. And again, I mentioned the time of year. It's not so much the heat that makes a liner more pliable and easier to work with as it is the UV index. If you've got a tricky liner you're working with and you're worried about it, look for a day that's got a high UV index as opposed to blistering heat. We're looking for sunlight. This is the page that I said, let's not get too scared about this. I know it can seem intimidating, being a pool, if you haven't done it before or you've only done a couple. This form is a streamlined version of the form I showed you before. It has fewer, it only has 42 points as opposed to 80. I just made bigger boxes for this because I tend to write kind of big. One of the things I'd like to point out to you here is in this diagram, you're looking to draw your pool similar to this diagram. We want a shallow break. We want a hopper break. We want obviously the perimeter of the pool, the perimeter of the transition in the hopper. We want points marked around the pool denoting, E and F, C and D, denoting the shallow and hopper breaks. G and H being your length of the pool. The reason we want these particular points noted here, all these numbers right here, letters rather, are noted in our measure form, is so once we punch all these numbers in, we can double check everything with these numbers to make sure that the image we're looking at on the screen in the computer in real life is the correct size. Everything is synced up. Another thing to note here is that A and B are 2/3 the length of the pool from each apart, and they're at least 3 feet apart. That 3 feet includes the entire imaginary line that A and B are creating right here. That whole line needs to be at least 3 feet from any point of the pool, the corner of the steps, the edge of the pool. The further away and the farther apart, they're gonna be more accurate. Always mark how far A and B are from each other. I did it once. I got to tell you, I did all these A/B points. I went and pulled my my A and B. I was ready to leave, and I realized I hadn't written down what A to B was. Boy, was I pissed. Had to A-B it twice. It happens. I like to go with a nice even number. So if I do something boneheaded like that, maybe I'll remember what it was. But if you note, I've written it down twice to make sure I don't do that. When you're placing A and B on your plot, if you see here up in the drawing, A is to the left and B is to the right if it's above the pool. Down here, A is to the right and B is to the left. The idea is A and B are from the inside of the pool, A being left and B being right. So you're standing inside this pool. It's as if you're reading. A is left, B is right. A is left, B is right. So they're going to be opposite each other depending on where your A-B line is. The things that I noted besides the letters on this drawing are particular points that I can note out in our A-B plot. Corners, the steps. I dropped a plumb line where each tread and riser came together. I used my down and out to mark a bit of chalk right there. And then as I call those numbers out, I mark them on the drawing. Do not waste your time and take a piece of chalk and go around the entire perimeter of the pool and make a mark every 1 to 2 feet with a number by it, because now you've gone around the pool one extra time and you're making more work for yourself. When you do this by yourself, put on your headset, turn your digital recorder on, hook one of your 100-foot tape measures to A, hook the other one to B, pull them all the way across the pool to the other side with lots of slack, and just start at one of these points. The only chalk marks I have are E, C, H, D, F, and G. That's the only thing I mark that pool with. I will pull both tape measures at once. I'll make sure A's in my left hand, B's in my right hand, or vice versa. I will drop down to where this, at the top of the deck, how it lines up with my bead receiver, and I'll call out in my headset, A, 6 feet, 3 inches, B, 14 feet. That, I'm sorry, actually E is over here. 7 feet, 1.5 inches, 15 feet, 11.5 inches. That's the only thing I'm marking. Then I will walk to another spot, 2, maybe 3 feet away, depending on how sweeping this arc is. The bigger the arc, the farther the points can be away, and we're still going to be accurate enough to make this liner. The tighter the arc, as we get into something like this, we need more points closer to each other. For any arc, we need a minimum of 3 points, a starting point, a middle point, and an ending point. On these big arcs, we're going to have more points than we will on the smaller arc, but they don't have to be so close together. If you notice here at point 2, somewhere over here, I just pulled A to where I hit 7 feet and then saw where B intersected with it. Same thing for the next point, 9 feet. Where did B intersect? 11 feet. Where did B intersect? 13 feet. Where did B intersect? Happened to be 8 feet. This is going to make your engineer happy. This is less numbers, less decimals he's got to type in. He's got whole numbers he can work with now. It's less you got to write down. It doesn't have to be a set distance from point to point to point. The only points that are set ahead of time are these letters. Everything else you're going to measure as you go, and you just be accurate. Make sure your digital. I'll press record at this point. I'll go around to here. Then I'll stop. I'll go back and check my recording. Make sure it was working. Yeah, it was working. Cool. I'll pick up at C and then work my way around to H. Do the same thing again. So I know that all these recordings are working. So when I get back into the office to listen to it and write this stuff down, I'm good to go. Any questions? I know there's a lot to cover on A-B. Does anybody have any questions about A-Bing before moving on? I know it's tricky to do by yourself, so I want you to feel confident. I've got a lot of people who don't have their video on, but that's all right. Okay. Moving on. So a little measure form 101 here. This is frustrating for us to have to decipher measure forms and try to figure out what it is you're trying to tell us. Okay, some people will make 7 feet 11 inches by putting 11 up here, superset smaller. No, that looks like 7 feet 11. I'm sorry, that looks like 7 inches. This is 7 feet 11 inches. There's no mistaking what this is. There is mistaking what this is. Don't do it. This could bite you in the ass. 7.5, when we're dealing with feet and inches, if you're talking 7.5, well, that's 7 feet 6 inches. What most guys are actually trying to say is 7 feet 5 inches. Avoid this. Just do it the right way. If we all do it the same way, then everybody's on the same page. There is no doubt when you're talking feet and inches what we're trying to represent here. Getting out of measuring, now we're getting into the actual world of installing because we only have like 15 minutes left. When you get to installing, if you got I just threw this up here because you got a major floor damage. How much vermiculite are you going to need? Are you going to mix it yourself? You're going to buy pre-mix. Having a chart like this just to know how much is needed for a 2-inch base on a pool this size is going to probably help you decide how much you're going to need if you got to do a 1-inch skim coat, say, of the shallow end, something along those lines. If you send us measurements, or any manufacturer, I don't mean us, any manufacturer measurements to make a liner, and you still have to do floor work, you got to make sure whatever floor work you do matches the drawings, the specs that you submitted to make that liner. Otherwise, do your floor work first, then measure the pool, then send it in. If they don't match, we're going to have some wrinkles. We're going to have some issues somewhere. This floor looks great. Love it. Love nice crisp lines. I would love to measure this pool. This is a dream. What isn't a dream is the rust. Clearly, when you're installing the before you install the new liner, you want to scrape this clean. You want to brush it, clean this up, smooth it out as best you can. I would go in and hit it with some rust reformer primer to try and slow down the rust processing process. Obviously, the galvanized processing is broken down over the years. This is a perfect candidate for wall foam. People ask all the time, should I put wall foam in? Is that going to insulate my pool? What, as opposed to what, the ground? No. I mean, if we're above ground, yeah, maybe. But an in-ground pool, this is why we need the wall foam. This is going to protect it. If we have liner over step, you always want some kind of foam there because you're talking a high traffic area at a point where people are not buoyant yet. Once we're down here, you weigh a fraction of what you weigh up here. 1/8-inch foam is going to be fine. 1/4-inch foam if something's really if you got like a block wall or something like that. But this is going back to that liner over step. Clearly, we don't have a bead receiver here. This is going to be the old-fashioned step rod pocket. When it comes to installing step rods, my biggest tip to you guys, if you don't do it already, tear a piece of that liner cover box off, put it underneath your drill. Make sure the chuck is not spinning on the liner as you're putting those clips in. I've done it. I've worn a hole in the liner. You got to patch it from the backside. And looks like we got a question here. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing this year. I'll be doing the retro stairs actually for the first year. I'll be doing a bunch of them. Is there any particular way you want the foam done? How would you recommend the foam's done on the seams, wall to wall? Are we doubling up on that?
On the seams, wall to
where you're bolting the retros to the steel, and then you're measuring for the liner.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm new to the retro stairs this year.
I've honestly never doubled up on foam unless I had to fill a corner gap or something.
Okay.
Are you dealing with any kind of gaps anywhere?
Well, I did have gaps, but it was more or less what it was like it was a corner stair into like the Olympic bench. Just had the seat, the long seat, the width of the pool, and then it was a corner. And the only gaps I was dealing with was where the corner was meeting the wall from stairs to bench.
Right.
I almost had to put a filler there. So what I did is I actually backed it up with foam.
Okay.
It was a nightmare, honestly. And it was my first one. It had to be a long bench.
Of course. Yeah. Anytime.
It was like last year I gave you that reverse L that nobody ever saw. It was like a wacky reverse lazy L pool we had. I mean, it was kind of the same scenario. I don't know who was doing these pools, but they were really driving me nuts. Why somebody would do that, I had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. If you have any kind of gap when you're doing steps like that, obviously we got to support that somehow. We don't want the liner just suspended. Something even sturdier than foam might be the way to go. A punch out plate or something to tack down on there and then cover with more foam. But
actually use the 1900 electrical plate. That's what I did use. Now that I think of it, I bent it and put it in there.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go. Some type of mending plate in there. Typically, though, no, you're just looking at just a single foam, a single cover layer, something of an 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch. 1/4 inch could actually throw you off a little bit on that first step because it's got some give to it. If we're dealing with elderly people, that's something to consider. I've never heard of it being an issue, but it's just maybe food for thought. When you're going to be getting into actually installing the liner, which is what this seminar is really about now that we have 10 minutes left, where do you place your QVACs? If you have only one QVAC to work with, I've made this a diagram. One is going to be your first location. It's usually going to be where the hopper break is. and it's going to be opposite of a skimmer. Assuming the skimmer's over here, we want our QVAC over here. I know some guys do shop vacs. Shop vacs will move it has more pressure, but it doesn't move volume like a QVAC does. Anytime you can get more suction on a liner, especially when we get into things that have negative curves that are going to cut off the flow of air all around here, right in here and around here. Anytime we can get more QVACs on there, it's going to have a better reaction as far as pulling that liner in to see how it's going to sit before the water actually goes in and we can't change anything. I know some companies that will actually do like 5 QVACs on a rectangle just because they got them. I know QVACs are getting hard to find right now due to supply and demand. But if you got 2, cool, go for it. If you don't, place it at point number 1 and just hope that you've got a solid suction with putting your tape over the skimmers if you need to, over the skimmer lids, taping up your fiberglass steps, which we're going to get to here momentarily. Basic liner installation from getting the liner in to actually hanging it. Most liners are going to come with unfolding directions. This is just based on a basic drop the liner in the box in the center of the deep shallow end. Carefully get that liner box open. Never cut towards the liner, always cut towards yourself, which sounds a little dangerous, but I'd rather you cut yourself than you cut the new liner. Just get that liner out of the box, unroll it a little bit to find where it's marked with the shallow end or shallow corners, so you can rotate that liner around so it's facing the right way. So when you pull this wall, it's going to the shallow wall, and you pull the other end, it's pulling towards the deep end. Unroll it till it fits the span of the width of the hopper. I can't talk tonight, guys. The width of the shallow end. Set your shallow end corners. If it's 6-inch radius corner, that's nice and easy. 90, obviously. If it's a greater radius, you got to try and find the middle with your toe, put that into the middle, and then pull straight up from there, and then start setting that corner. Put some bead lock in there to hold it in place while you're working the other corner as well. The corners is where we want to start on a simple shape like this. Once the 2 shallow end corners are set, run the liner down to the deep end corners. This is where it becomes a 2-man process per corner. Probably one guy lifting the liner up and holding it when you got a heavyweight wall. The other guy actually setting the corner, trying to find the corner on the, and this is all done from the deck, pulling straight up, putting it into the corner, putting the bead lock in there to hold that corner, doing the same on the other side. So now we've got the 4 corners of the pool set, but our walls look like this. We have these big sags in the middle. The reason we want to do it this way is so that we're not starting here, running the liner along here till we hit the shallow break, then getting up on the deck and running the liner. And then we get to here and we don't have enough liner because we haven't done enough stretch on this wall, or we get to here and we've got all this excess material because it's a hot day and we've stretched this liner too much. If we set the corners first, end up with a sag, then we can go back to the middle of the sag, pull it up, put it in, put a piece of bead lock if we need it, go to the middle of each one of those sags, stick them in, bead lock if we need it. This way we are evenly dispersing this material all along this wall so it's not stretching or one way or the other. We can do that on all 4 walls, and this liner is now evenly set. We shouldn't have any issues with wrinkles leaning one way or the other that we got to go back and tweak the floor, tweak the bead receiver. This is obviously straightforward for basic geometric shape, but as we get into freeform shapes, we need to work from a different starting point. Same principle as far as placing the liner, rotating it until we've got the shallow wall facing the right way, unrolling it to the shallow break. Now, as we unfurl this a bit, what we're going to be looking for is on the back side of the liner, there will be a mark that denotes the shallow break on each side. I believe most manufacturers do this even on rectangular pools, but definitely on freeform pools. This is your starting point here and here, these 2 X's. Once you set that, you can now swing around and set your shallow end so that end of the pool is locked in. And from there, we can run it, trying not to pull too much, not too little. This is where we're gonna have to read some wrinkles and get some experience under our belts to really feel that out, the right amount of stretch on a liner. You may want to chase some of these longer curves with bead lock until that pool is filled, because it has a propensity to fall out as we're working on it. We don't have any corners that we can peg in. Obviously, we're going to be running the liner over where our QVACs have been placed, the liner will simply pop right over the hose. You can shoot a piece of beadlock into either side of the hose just to hold it into place. Obviously, we're going to duct tape up around that hose to make that airtight, so we can get maximum suction going. Speaking of wrinkles, I couldn't find a picture of an in-ground pool, so I grabbed this one. But we can see these wrinkles are sweeping to the left here as the wall is hanging. Basically, this floor needs to shift this way. Kind of hard to do when you're standing on it. Or this bead needs to shift this way to get these wrinkles a bit more straight up and down. When we're dealing with free-form pools like this, that's what we need to read, is how are these wrinkles laying? If we know this point and this point are set, as we have it laying in here and we've turned on the vacuums, are the floor seams lining up with where they should with the hopper break, the shallow break? If they're not, we need to turn the vacuums off and shift this way or that, turn the vacuums back on, read those wrinkles some more, and see which way this liner is twisting or needing to twist. The age-old question, which we were talking about before the seminar, one of the things I wanted to address was fiberglass step installation, the face plates. Do we do dry install or do we do wet install? It's the age-old question. I want to thank Swimming Pool Steve for his site and the use of his images here. I didn't make these myself, so I got to give him a shout out. But this is a wet fit, and this is a dry fit of the face plates for your fiberglass steps. Wet fit meaning we've got at least 6 inches of water here in the shallow end. I like to see it actually up to the bottom of the steps. Dry fit meaning we're just trying to close this off. We got wood over here. We got duct tape all around it. We got the vacuums going. We're going to go ahead and dry fit these face plates before there's any water in the pool. We're going to talk about which way is the right way to do it. This is what happens when you dry fit. Okay, if you're trying to step on this liner right here to stretch it down and put that faceplate on, you're what, 200, 2 1/4, 250 maybe? How much do you weigh? Are you putting enough pressure in that one spot, that 12 inches there, to really get this liner to stretch in, as opposed to 8.5 pounds per gallon, 7.5 pounds per cubic foot, thousands of pounds of water evenly dispersed over this liner to give it a proper stretch, not just down, but across? Are you going to be able to do that? No, you're not. This is what happens when you're not able to do that. You put that faceplate on too soon. The pool fills up. You can see the wavering of the liner, the hole that was created here in the corner where it tore, the leak that created the rust on the wall, the holes that split open from where the screws go. This is what happens when we jump the gun and we install faceplates too early. You need an even stretch on the liner all the way around the pool. This amount of water in the hopper, that's perfect. You can go in at that point and put your faceplates on for your main drains, but you should not be putting anything else on for these. Obviously, you need to be careful going down here. You're going to be wet. I usually use scuba boots to keep from slipping and actually turn around and go down on all fours. I've actually seen somebody slip on this transition, smack his face, and I thought I was going to have to take him to the hospital because it was pretty bad. Do be careful. But we got our vac going. We got the faceplates on in the main drains. Nothing else should be cut in like this light or these steps until we have about, well, water up to about this point right here. If you see this this sweeping arc right here, how much stress do you think is going to be put on the liner in those bottom 6 to 8 inches once this stretches in with all that slack right there? That's all locked in. The rest is going to stretch unevenly. Same thing's going to happen here. The liner is locked in from the light up, but next to it, the liner is going to stretch down, putting strain on the screw holes in the bottom here and making the tile border dip on either side of that light. So we need to wait until water is up to about here before cutting anything in. Again, look at how much slack we have here in this corner, and we've already cut this corner step in. So it's too early. What did I click? So here's an example of wet install. I like it being done this way, and I'd like to see even more water put in this way. I love the setup this guy has. Am I still sharing my screen? What happened here? You are screen sharing. Great. Come on. There we go. Come on. Sorry, guys. Okay. I like what this guy is doing here with this panel of wood at the top that he's got bead receiver attached to. He's taped it all up. This is a great way. It's a little bit of extra work, but I think this is awesome. He's going to get really good suction despite having fiberglass steps when his bead was locked in all the way over there, and this is all taped up. He's got his water in there. He's got a nice pull. I like the look of this. A little bit more work, but if you really want a quality install, I think that's the way to go. Here is a great example of, I don't know how they got this in so tight. I was always a tape the back of the liner to the fiberglass steps guy, but I usually had to build up to fill the gaps. You're usually putting water bags or sand bags or bags of river rock. I'd recommend the 10-foot double tube water bags. They're not going to roll. When you're done with them, you just open them and dump the water right in the pool. Never a chance of a mess happening in the pool. Trying to kick that floor in as tight as you can under there so you can tape this up, turn your vacs on, and get a good suction on it. Another great idea that I saw was 1x3 clamped to both sides of this liner, along with a piece of wood, and then the wood is taped up. This is holding this liner in nice. I mean, this is great. I don't know what this 2x4 is doing, to be honest with you, but that'll work too. But as long as we're installing these face plates after getting that 6 inches of water in the pool, we're not putting a strain on the liner. We're not making it tear prematurely. In the wall ladders are just like fiberglass steps. Same idea. Get that 6 inches of water in the shallow end first, then put your face plates on, then cut it out. The last thing you want to be telling before I jump to that, the face plates on the steps are kind of keyed to the steps themselves. So it's wise to label them in some fashion or lay them out around the steps so you can keep track of which one goes with which. The screws are clearly different. They're a smaller screw. They're not a skimmer screw. You got to keep those screws separate. If you're ever doing a renovation job and you pull out a screw out of one of these holes and it's bigger than the others, mark that hole. The chances are the last guy who put that liner in encountered a stripped hole, used a bigger screw to fix that, and now we have to remember what hole that goes into. Have some larger screws at the ready if you do encounter some stripped holes here. If you get one hole one screw fits tight, that screw over there fits tight, but the one in the middle is loose, maybe just some RTV silicone or some of the pool putty on that screw. So we've got a tight faceplate and we start making that hole watertight, but definitely keep track of anything different that's coming out of there. At the very end, the dreaded light install. I've messed with rafts and ropes and guys holding me this and that. The best way is really just to hang over the edge and get the head rush and do this thing upside down. I wish I had a better answer for you, but that seems to be about it. The last thing that you want to tell your liner manufacturer is that you're not sure about this measurement or that measurement. Hey, listen, it's vinyl. Just balloon the bottom for me. Well, this is what you might end up looking at. So let's try and avoid that if we can. Let's be accurate. Let's be clear and concise. Let's do it the right way. And if we have enough time, let's maybe answer some questions. Now that it's 7 o'clock. Right on the dot. Anybody? I can't see half of you, so I don't know if anybody's waving their hands or jumping up and down or acting crazy or not. I guess not. Well, again, here's my contact information. You can call me in the office. You can text me at this number. You can email me. If you're out in the field and you're looking at some really crazy free form, got all kinds of nonsense going on, you're not sure what to do about it. You got some issue like we talked about before with the retrofit steps and the gaps. If you're ever unsure, reach out to me and I'll try and walk you through what I can over the phone. If you're one of my dealers and I really got to come out and take a look at the site, I'll even do that. But accuracy is going to be key when it comes to the steps, things of that nature. Overall, we're not going to get too crazy with something that's 40 feet long. If we're off by an inch, it's not the end of the world. I could go, I know Phil had mentioned earlier, is there a telltale sign as to when a liner should be replaced? If you're being called in for a liner reset, the bead is popped out of the receiver, and you go there and you go to pull it back up and it's clear you're going to need some hot water to get that thing to move again. And even with the hot water, it's still not wanting to move. Those elasticizers are shot. That homeowner is going to have to live with the liner like that, or bite the bullet and just buy a new one. Clearly, fading is a big issue. That's something I could talk probably another hour on. So that we'll save that for another time as far as the chemistry and the chemicals of vinyl manufacturing are concerned. But you'll always find that one corner over the other four is going to die before the rest of the pool does. Above the water line, that one corner that gets the afternoon sun, that's the one that's going to get dry rotted. It's going to melt. You're going to feel some bubbling on the surface. If you encounter a pool like that has a corner that has that rough surface, that dry feel to it, that's showing the age on that liner, the brutality of the sunlight that's done damage to it, and it's marked at that point. So just put it in your customer's ear that it might be time to save up for something like this. Guys, there's so much more that I could go into, but I know we all have lives to get back to, phone calls to return, because it's going to be another absolutely bonkers season with Staycation Round 2 happening. I see some familiar faces in here, and I thank you all for joining me. Again, anytime you have any questions, even if it comes up later, reach out to me. More than happy to help.
All right, Jim, great job. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And a last chance for questions, anybody? Going once, going twice.
Yes.
Oh, we,
Ray again. Can we unmute him? Hang on, Ray. There we go.
Cool. You had mentioned chemicals in manufacturing.
Yeah.
Are you talking calcium carbonate and elasticity?
I'm actually talking about the science of longevity when it comes to liners. A common question that we're asked is, what kind of liner is going to last longer as far as fading is concerned? Well, there's two factors when it comes to fading. One is chemistry, one's the sunlight. Obviously, you got to keep the chlorine under control. We know 1 part per million of free chlorine, 99% of all viruses, bacteria, and parasites that are harmful to us will be dead in less than a minute. So we don't need to get crazy with constant shocking, 12 parts per million of this and that. Keep the chlorine in check, shock as needed. That's going to take care of that end. The other end that we can't control is the sunlight, short of getting an automated cover and spending a lot of money to cover the pool, or using a solar cover just to keep some direct sunlight off the pool as much as possible. But one of the things to factor in is the vinyl itself. The UV inhibitors that are added to the vinyl material, that chemical is white. So more of it can be added to white vinyl than it can be, say, to light blue, dark blue, tan, gray, black. By the time you get to black, there's much less of that chemical material. So if you have a customer who has a problem, they have a lot of sun in their backyard, and this is their third liner in 10 years because it keeps fading, I can't guarantee that a liner that's printed on white vinyl is going to be their white knight and keep them from fading, but it's certainly food for thought. The lighter the liner, the longer it has the greater chance it has of lasting in that UV light without noticeable fading. If they have an issue like that, for God's sake, steer them clear of the dark, the dark gray, the black liners, those sorts of things. Stick them, get them in the lighter material. And you'll notice, and this is true with any manufacturer, many patterns, it'll be the same print, same tile border, same floor pattern. It's just one's printed on white vinyl, one's printed on blue, so they have a different look. They have one pops more because it's on white, where the other one's more subdued where it's on blue. So maybe try and steer them towards that white vinyl if they're hip to a particular tile or a particular floor pattern.
I get it.
You have another question.
Go ahead. Somebody else, go ahead.
Yeah. Who else we got?
Jonathan.
Yes. Can you hear me or see me?
Yes, we can, Jonathan. Thanks.
All right. So recently I was measuring a freeform kidney shaped pool, and all the AB measurements matched up from the diagram I got back from the manufacturer, except for the distance of the fiberglass steps from one point to the other point on the ends of the steps. But every other every other measurement matched up exactly. We double checked, re-AB'd the pool, and still we were getting 7'4" across the straight line, across the fiberglass steps, radius steps. But they were getting 6'3" totally off. But like I said, every other measurement lined up.
Huh.
What would you recommend in that situation?
And you A-B'd it twice?
We did it twice, and all of our measurements match up identical to theirs, except for that distance from one end of the stairs to the other.
On fiberglass steps.
Yes.
My first thought would be, you know, say these were fiberglass instead of, I'm still sharing my screen, right?
Yep, that's it.
Okay. Assuming these were fiberglass steps, maybe taking from this corner over to point F, give them that measurement, this corner to D, this corner to H, so on and so forth. Give them some cross-reference, very similar to what we did here, where we weren't A-B'ing the pool, but we were trying to locate those steps based on other points in the pool, standard shallow breaks, straight wall,
Right.
things of that nature. Yeah, if you A-B it twice and it still comes out, that's really
Yeah. I went back and redid it, and all of the measurements check out, and all of our cross numbers check out. I don't know
okay.
what's going on.
Then
But all right.
it might be a case of pool goblins moving the steps. Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't
All right.
make sense. Yeah, but yeah, my first inclination would be to get some more cross-reference measurements.
All right.
From
I'll send them some more, and hopefully it'll work out. Jim, thank you very much. That was very good.
Yeah, if that doesn't work, reach out to me, and we'll keep brainstorming it.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Cool. You bet.
Good questions. Good questions.
Yeah.
But we're going to wrap things up at this
Okay.
point. And Jim, we want to thank you and Kayden Manufacturing for your presentation. And this is going to conclude Metro's webinar series for a while, because we all need to get busy making a living.
Whew, yeah.
Everybody's super busy, so we're going to wish everybody good health and lots of success this season. And we will pick up where we left off this fall with a continuing series of educational webinars.
Excellent.
And
Great.
and one other thing, we will be posting a recording of the webinar on Metro's YouTube channel, so be on the lookout for that very soon.
Excellent.
I miss you, Phil.
Hey Ray, good to see you. Miss you too, buddy.
All right, man. Thank you, everybody. I'm gonna eat
Thank
dinner.
you, guys.
Bye.
Reach out to me if you need me.
Thanks again.
Thanks for having
again,
me,
Jim.
Phil.
Great seminar.
You bet. Thank you so much.